Welcome back, Sleepyheads, and thanks for tuning in to another episode of Sleepy Aliens Perspective. I'm your host, Ashley, and I just want to play this clip that just aired today, and it's from other survivors of Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell. They are so enraged, they feel so betrayed by their government that they are now basically going to be compiling their own list of perpetrators and releasing that. And I think they will hold on to this list to see if the government actually, responds and if they take action and stop covering up these crimes, stop protecting these perpetrators, stop hiding the mass and corrupt issue of trafficking, child and adult, in this country, the SRA, the elite, PDF rings, all of this stuff that people know is going on, that we've been gaslit about, that has been erased from, news and history where people aren't covering it. And there's so many cases, and I've been studying this, and I've been looking at cases from the 1970s up to the late 1990s of different states covering up mass unveilings of child and adult trafficking, public officials, police officials, CPS workers, all being involved in the peddling, the abuse of these children, the satanic rituals that these children had to participate in. Not all of them, but several of them, in a lot of cases, have accounts of this. And, the story that I'm reading about now is about the Franklin cover-up. And I'm just going to play this clip, and then we'll just come back to it, and I'll just talk more about what I've been researching.
Hi there, my name is Lisa Phillips, and I'm the host of a award-nominated podcast called From Now On, a platform supporting survivors. I want to thank all of my survivor sisters who came before me today. I'll be very short. In the year 2000, I was taken to Jeffrey Epstein's island while on a photo shoot on a nearby island. Who I saw and what I experienced there was a glimpse into a very dark and disturbing world. For years after, I tried to avoid Jeffrey, but he had introduced me to Katie Ford, the owner of the Ford Modeling Agency. Epstein's reach went to the very top of fashion, arts, and entertainment. This did not just happen to underage girls in Florida. In New York City, hundreds of young, ambitious women were abused by him. Epstein was not just a serial predator, he was an international human trafficker. And many around him knew, many participated, and many profited. And yet, he was protected. So I stand here today for every woman who has been silenced, exploited, and dismissed. We are not asking for pity. We are here demanding accountability, and I'm demanding justice. Congress must choose. Will you continue to protect predators, or will you finally protect survivors? And also, I would like to announce here today, us Epstein survivors have been discussing creating our own list. We know the names. Many of us were abused by them. Now, together as survivors, we will confidentially compile the names we all know who were regularly in the Epstein world. And it will be done by survivors and for survivors. No one else is involved. Stay tuned for more details.
Hello, my name is Shantae Davies, and I'm here before you today as a survivor of decades of pain, trauma, and betrayal at the hands of Ghislaine Maxwell and Jeffrey Epstein, and the people who enabled them, and a government that for far too long refused to help. In 2002, I was living in California, a young woman with high aspirations of becoming an actress. I was already beginning to make a name for myself in the industry. A person I trusted, someone I thought was a friend, invited me to meet a powerful woman who could help advance my career. That woman happened to be Ghislaine Maxwell. I was asked to give her a massage, though I had almost no experience, and when I did, she praised me and promised introductions to someone enormously powerful, someone who could change the course of my life, and that man was Jeffrey Epstein. At first, I was an excited young woman on top of the world. Epstein flew me to his private island. He listened to my dreams, promised to help, but his promises came with a catch. The abuse began. He told me to keep it secret. He manipulated me with quid pro quo I did not consent to, but I felt I had no one to turn to. He was too powerful. I was just one of the many young women trapped in his orbit. I was even taken on a trip to Africa with former President Bill Clinton and other notable figures. In those moments, I realized how powerless I was. If I spoke out, who would believe me? Who would protect me? Epstein himself was the most powerful leader of our country. Epstein surrounded himself, with the most powerful leaders of our country and the world. He abused not only me, but countless others, and everyone seemed to look away. The truth is, Epstein had a free pass. He bragged about his powerful friends, including our current president, Donald Trump. It was his biggest brag, actually. And while what I endured will haunt me forever, I live every day with PTSD. I live as a mother trying to raise my child while distrusting a world that has betrayed me. This kind of trauma never leaves you. It breaks families apart. It shapes the way we see everyone around us. But one thing is certain, unless we learn from this history, monsters like Epstein will rise again. There are files, government files, that hold the truth about Epstein, who he knew, who owed him, who protected him, and why he was allowed to operate for so long without consequence. Why was Maxwell the only one held accountable when so many others played a role? Why does the government hide this information from the public? This secrecy is not protection, it's complicity. And as long as the truth is buried, justice will remain out of reach. That is why this bill matters. Passing it will, bless you, ensure that the suffering of survivors is not in vain. Passing it will bring accountability, transparency, and prevention. It will help protect the next generation of predators who seek to place themselves above the law through wealth, influence, and connections. This is not just my story. It is about every survivor who carries invisible scars. It's about the weight we live with daily. It is about the families broken and the futures stolen. So I ask you, President Trump and members of Congress, why do we continue to cover up sexual abuse and assault? Who are we covering for? Let the public know the truth. We cannot heal without justice. We cannot protect the future if we refuse to confront the past. Thank you.
Let's just give a round of applause for all the courage and strength that the survivors have shown. We now will take a few questions. You can always get Congressman Massey, me, or Congresswoman Green in the hallways and other places. If you have questions for us, that's fine. But I wanted to see first if you have questions for the lawyers and the survivors, and Brad will facilitate any of the questions to the survivors. Yes?
Yeah. This question would be for the survivors, Mr. Edwards. The president has said that this Epstein issue is a hoax, is the words that he used. Can we get your reactions to what you think when you hear him say that?
I'll answer that. Mr. President Donald J. Trump, I am a registered Republican, not that that matters because this is not political. However, I cordially invite you to the Capitol to meet me in person so you can understand this is not a hoax. We are real human beings. This is real trauma.
It is so powerful and so moving to see these women using their voice and their collective power as a unit to hold our government accountable. And for someone who, you know, I have recently gotten the chance to see some of the more actual people who work for the government who really focus on doing good, servicing people, bettering, public service and trying to find ways to make things more efficient in this country. I have recently gotten to really experience that, and I know that it's true. So when we have these elite factions within various agencies of government who, find ways to use public funds, who are involved in drug peddling or trafficking, whatever it may be, or even the Satanism and the ritual abuse, there's just so many different levels to it. And there's layers and layers of history. If you start looking back from the 1970s and that period up until the late 1990s, they were so sloppy. They thought they could get away with everything. So going back into this history and trying to understand that time period and when things really seemed to be proliferating and the trafficking rings seemed to be getting more prevalent and more interconnected and more elite people were being involved. And then, you have this figure that comes into play like Jeffrey Epstein, and suddenly things become, they can't hide these things anymore. And I want to say that I was grateful for the Diddy trial because of this. And I think people seeing the response to that and the fact that this man clearly was involved in all these things and all the other accusations that he's had out against him, and the charges and the response, and the fact that after all of those searches, like, what did they turn up? So it's this constant sense of corruption, this constant sense of cover up and suppression of vital information that the public deserves to know. How are they going to impose all of these? Especially, I live in DC, and I'm just going to play a video because I just got off the metro station, the NOMA station, to go home. And when I tell you that they are trying to snatch up these young black kids, when I tell you just look at the video. They have multiple police cars. I know I'm all over the place, but I'm just like really emotionally charged. I'm like pissed off. And I've been pissed off. I've been pissed off for a while. And then I really got to me, once Virginia Giuffre suspiciously passed away. And I will never buy that full story of what they're trying to sell with that. But I'm getting off the metro station. Not only do they have the National Guard, and across from the Noma Gallaudet station is the American Federal... The ATF. It's another government, police force, basically, right across from there. So they have the National Guard. They have regular DC Metropolitan Police. And then they have the guards of that ATF building. And all of this is happening right when these kids are getting out of school. And so something that you'll see a lot of kids do is, they will basically... they won't pay for their metro fare. They'll skip over the bars, or they'll go right up behind somebody who's paying, and then they'll get through that way, or they'll just jump over the thing entirely. So when I saw that, it really, really upset me, because I'm like, why else would you have all of this? You are clearly trying to snatch up these black kids. And maybe I should have stayed, because right when I was coming out, there was just herds and herds of, young black kids. And, I grew up in West Virginia, where I had a reliable school bus system. And I never, ever thought, oh, I have to take the city bus to get home. Oh, I have to take the metro to get home. Some of these kids genuinely can't afford that. I mean, I work with people who don't even like to pay for the metro, and these are adults who sometimes don't always have the money to get a monthly metro pass. So I can only imagine, what these kids have to go through. So it's just something I don't get mad about, and I feel like they should get free fare regardless, especially if they're trying to go to school and go back home. I get it if you want to make kids pay on the weekends or something. And I know I'm getting off topic, but this is just the fact that we have this heavy policing in DC, this heavy scrutiny of, young black boys and, teenagers. And yet we have this massive cover up, and we have, this individual in public office who has been accused of so many crimes, and other public officials who have been accused of so many crimes. And I tell you, the amount of drug addicts who work in our government, I can't even, it just makes me sick. And then you have regular people out here who have to get drug tested for their jobs, who aren't addicts, who haven't committed crimes, but there's powerful people who get away with the worst things in our system. And I think that's what we're all sick of. We're all sick of the cover up. And it's getting to the point when it comes to the satanic ritual abuse, the child trafficking, the adult trafficking, the PDF rings, the child pornography rings. They cannot hide the elite involvement with these things anymore. You cannot tell us that it's not real. You cannot tell us that it's happening. There have been so many survivors who have been speaking out online in the last several years, and there was a period where no one definitely believed them 10 years ago, but now these people are being validated and supported, and these stories are just becoming more prevalent, and these survivors are writing books, and their testimonies are so similar, and the perpetrators are similar. They're naming the same people, they're naming the same cities, they're naming the same satanic ritual practices. You just can't deny it at this point. And my gut, I just tell you, when I do this research, when I read these books, it is so hard to get through a single book. Like, I'll read a certain amount of pages, then I have to close it because I get pissed off, I get sad, I feel physically sick, and I picture these people, these young, well, when they were young, these children who were around these powerful people who are supposed to be serving the public, protecting people, especially when you think about CPS. It's all sickening. But you have these young people who are surrounded by it. And do you know what that does to your psyche? I know I've talked about Richard Weinman on here, and he was a survivor of the Boy Scouts Troop 137 case. And that was an infamous 1980s, probably maybe early 1990s in New Orleans, where you had these public officials and Boy Scout troop leaders who were literally going into neighborhoods looking for vulnerable children from single parent homes, mainly single mother homes, and they would get them to enroll in Boy Scouts, and then they would traffic these boys to different cities. They would do horrible, unspeakable things to these boys. I'm talking about priests were involved, janitors of schools were involved, public officials of schools. And I've been reading about the Franklin cover-up case. We have a police chief involved. There's a superintendent of a high school involved. There's banking public officials involved. There's people in the Attorney General's office. There's people within Congress who were intentionally covering up this case that involved child trafficking, adult trafficking, drug peddling, child pornography rings, PDFs, orgies. I'm talking about these orgies happened within such elite circles. And I'm just going to read just a part from this book by John DeCamp, who was a senator in Nebraska, which is where the Franklin cover-up happened. And he basically broke down the whole case because he was a part of the investigating team, and he has a lot of the interview transcripts from some of the victims. And these transcripts were initially covered up by police officers and other public officials. And the person that I'm going to mention in here is also mentioned in Kathy O'Brien, a survivor of not only MKUltra but SRA as well. And she mentioned this individual, another White House individual, okay? And I know you won't know all the names, but I just want to give you a sense of this description. Nellie, who was this 15-year-old victim, survivor of all of these crimes happening in Nebraska, was also accompanied Mr. and Mrs. King, perpetrators, and their son, Prince, on trips to Chicago, New York, and Washington, D.C., beginning when she was 15 years old. She missed 22 days of school, almost totally due to these trips. Nellie was taken along on the pretense of being Prince's babysitter. Last year, she met Vice President George Bush. That's George Bush Sr. This is happening in the 1980s, okay? And saw him again at one of the parties Larry gave while on a Washington, D.C. trip. At some of the parties, there are just men, as was the case at the party George Bush attended. Older men and younger men in their early 20s. Nellie says she has seen sodomy committed at those parties. At other parties during Larry's trips, Larry had local sex workers in their 20s and 30s there to entertain his male guest. At these parties, Nellie said every guest had a bodyguard, and she saw some of the men wearing guns. All guests had to produce a card, which was run through a machine to verify the guest was, in fact, who they said they were. And then each guest was frisked down before entering the party. So just like Kathy O'Brien, this 15-year-old survivor of trafficking, going into these elite parties with just a bunch of men and a bunch of young girls or boys, she saw George Bush Sr. there. And Kathy O'Brien talks about her experiences with George Bush Sr. And that he's been implicated now by 2 survivors. And I'm going to be breaking this down in more detail, but I just wanted to touch on this because the fact that, in that video today from these Epstein survivors, they mentioned Bill Clinton, who has also been named as a perpetrator by Kathy O'Brien in her books, along with Hillary Clinton. It's enraging. It's enraging. And I know it's so scary for some people to have to acknowledge that our government, our system is that corrupt. But it's not all corrupt. It's just these elite factions that have been allowed to get away with this for so long. And I think, I don't know, clearly from the response of even people who voted for Trump have about the Epstein list being covered up and the crime itself being completely suppressed, and the fact that Ghislaine has now been transferred to a less minimal security prison. I mean, what has she done? What does she do to get that, right? But it's getting to the point where they can't hide it. And so either we're going to live in this country where we have to keep swallowing the fact that these things are happening and powerful people are committing these crimes, and they're just going to rub it in our faces at some point and say, what are you going to do about it? You can't do anything about it. You've never been able to do anything about it. So what these women are doing, these Epstein survivors, holding our government accountable, it's forcing them to act. And that is the kind of unity at some point we're all going to collectively have to have. And I know it's so hard to focus on these issues when people are just trying to pay their rent. People are trying to get through jobs that they're not inspired or passionate about. They're trying to get through school, take care of their loved ones. People have illnesses. There's just so much going on, and it's so hard to get to the point where we can say, yes, I have the energy and capacity to unify and focus on this massive, massive corrupt issue that is tainting our society, that is harming our children, that has been harming our children for so long. And the fact that, you have these children now, and, Trump wants to round up all the YNs, and I get it. Some of them are out of control in the city, but some of them just need a place to develop themselves. They need stimulation. We need, I want to say a YMCA, but when I read about these stories about child trafficking in the 1970s through the 1990s, the YMCA was where even John Wayne Gacy, the clown killer, he would go to those areas to pick up young boys who would, prostitute themselves. So to some degree, those places aren't safe. And even in this Franklin cover-up, the public officials, they were all connected to this boys, wellness sort of club. And they would use those boys. They would basically get them involved in the trafficking and the satanic abuse and the ritualisms. they would get them involved. And with the CPS, same thing. So we can't even fully trust these systems. But, these kids need something else, right? I know, again, I'm all over the place, but it's just, I just can't believe it. And I can't believe we're still here. I can't believe after all of these years. I mean, how long has it been? It's been almost 6-7 years now. We have been waiting for the truth of the Jeffrey Epstein case to be released. We've been waiting for people to acknowledge that this man was connected and not only working for people within our government, but also a part of a very larger and darker issue of ritual abuse. I'm going to stop ranting, but I will, of course, I just want to read that bit from this book, and I'm going to do, once I finish the whole book, at some point before it makes me sick, I will finish this whole book, and I will do another video on it. But it's a really big case, and there's a lot of people involved, and when I thought, okay, let me, study this issue from the period of 1970 to the late 1990s, it's so massive, but there's just so much evidence out there, and if I could do anything, to be a part of the solution, be a part of the awareness to help these children, a little research and discussing this research online shouldn't be the worst thing. That's all I have for this video, Sleepyheads. Thank you for listening. Thank you for tuning in. Let me know in the comments what you think about everything. Let me know what you know about the Franklin cover-up case in Nebraska, or whatever else you may know about these issues, from that period of the 1970s to the 1990s. Okay. All right. Have a good night, Sleepyheads.